And welcome everybody to Off Day with Ballpark Nation. We opened last week. We opened with the Eyes of Texas. This week we opened with the Aggie War Hymn because dedicate quick shout out to one of my favorite students of all time, Alexis, who will be a Fighting Texas Aggie Andy. But our alma mater graduates
class of 2030 is
2030. Don't even get me started on scrolling through the directory at St. Michael's now that we're a merged school and seeing kindergartners that are listed as the class of 2036. But shout out to Alexis and all of the alums from St. Pius and St. Michael's that are going to be enrolling at Texas A&M, starting the next big chapter of their life. Do you remember what it was like to be young and off to college?
No. And I'm reminded every time I talk to my kids about it that they tell me that was 35 years ago and nothing is the same. And to be very honest, it's not. Nothing is the same. It is in a completely different world. I remember me leaving for college involved me stuffing my personal belongings into the back of a Camaro and driving to school. There was no caravan of parents. There was no U-Haul. There was no let's get the dorm room ready. It was me showing up with basically a set of sheets and some towels and like 3 changes of clothes and go, this is what I'm wearing for the rest of the semester. Hope it doesn't get cold.
Jessica likes to tell the story of, I think she showed up to Austin literally on her first day of classes and missed orientation because she's like, well, my brother goes here. What's the big deal? But you're right. There was none of this, and I'm not even saying that's necessarily a bad thing that we celebrate the way we do, but
it's just different.
It's just different. And of course, I was I had the opportunity to take my student Michael, who I talked about on the show last week. I took him to his first Longhorn game as a student. It was fun watching him sing the Eyes for the first time. But I was telling him that, when I was a freshman at UT, I was 28. And so Jessica my wife was getting all the, so your son's a Longhorn emails. Like she just was tickled to death about that, a very different situation. But it's an exciting time, people going off to school. And it's one of my favorite times teaching around here is just to see where they do a thing the last Wednesday of when the seniors are here, where all the teachers wear the t-shirts of their alumni of their alma mater as well. So it's just really fun to kind of have that going.
Which certainly feels like it goes into your wheelhouse because it's not like you have a shortage of wardrobe choices for that day. You could probably think like you've done for certain jersey days and just do a different one for every period.
I really could. Honestly, case in point today, I have a dear friend who works in our admissions office, and her son is, I think, the backup tight end at Texas Tech. And I wore a purple shirt today, and she's the other day, and she goes, "Oh my God, purple looks so good on you. I'm only used to seeing you in navy blue and various shades of orange." I was like, okay.
What was his NIL deal? Did he get a good one?
I don't know.
You should.
I don't know if he did or didn't. I do know that he was a walk-on. He's now a grad. He's graduated, so he's playing with his last year of eligibility. But he's the last walk-on of that class that's still there. I think he's on scholarship now, but we're actually going to go. He's having us up for Parents Weekend. So I'll be at a Texas Tech game. Andy, I will wear red or black, but I will wear no logos.
You could always do the Cliff Kingsbury method of wearing black when he was the offensive coordinator at A&M during Johnny Manziel's Heisman year. Never wore maroon, which to the consternation of a lot of grumpy alumni, they noticed that pretty quickly that he only wore the logo because the coaches have to, but everything was always black. And he would use it with, they need to be able to see me on the sideline quickly and identify me, even when he was up in the press box. But it was no secret that he was just not going to put maroon on, and we, you deal with it.
Coach Handsome. So yeah, there you go. Shout out to Jack Esparza as well.
Hey, Jack, I would call Cody Campbell though. He's got to have a few $100,000 just lying around that he would do.
Yeah, give you. Hold out, buddy. Hold out. Let's jump right into the modern state of college football, though. And, obviously we will get to a little bit about what happened at Bluebell Park last night because I need your take on that.
2 touchdowns and a missed extra point in the 3rd inning. That's what happened.
Oh my! Had the game on my phone. Woof. It's not been a very good. It's not been this much fun to be in Mississippi since somewhere around 1864, 65. To catch everybody up before we dive into sort of what it all means. First, Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin says he leaves Ole Miss because the state and the university are still tied to deep racism. I don't doubt that's true. I'm sure it's changing. I'll tell a story. Andy, I know that when you were in Austin, I don't know if you remember the radio personality Sean Adams. He used to do a show with Chip Brown, and he's since passed at a very young age. He died like 10 years ago.
I remember the name, but sure.
Was an athlete, two-sport star at Abilene Christian, but was recruited to go to Ole Miss in the 90s. And that was back when they would send out a VHS tape of like their recruitment pitch. And his dad put in the VCR, and it was immediately a sea of Confederate flags. His dad hit eject and said, nope. So they're not wrong. The other thing is that Sark, and this is where Texas is going to take it on the chin, also for A&M and for Florida and for Vanderbilt, because they have the same damn policy we do about the number of credit hours that can actually transfer for a degree at the University of Texas. But he basically says, Texas, if you want to get a degree, you basically lose half your credits. It's no different at the schools I just mentioned. The number might be little, but the concept's the same. Ole Miss doesn't have that, so you literally could get a degree in take a class in basket weaving.
Sure.
Finish off your degree. He said the quiet part out loud. First things first, though, let's steer into the Lane Kiffin thing, because and I want you to begin your thoughts on it by explaining to everybody where the LSU Tigers got their name, because you had a really funny text to me about the rare Bengal tiger roaming the swamps.
I mean, I think everybody knows that if you go to Louisiana, one of the things you want to do is avoid the bayous because of all the tigers running around native to the state of Louisiana. That's long known in history. It's certainly not because the school is certainly not known as the Tigers because of a certain infantry unit with the Confederate Army that the LSU alumni just said, that'd be a great thing for us to adopt for our athletic teams post-Civil War. That's not a thing that happened. So Lane Kiffin is fully justified in ignoring everything that goes on in the state of Louisiana to justify his movement as a head coach. First of all, I have no problem with Lane Kiffin wanting to coach at LSU versus Ole Miss. LSU is a better job than Ole Miss as a coach.
It's not even close.
It's not. Just on NIL dollars available to him, it's an entirely different world, and he is going to be able to recruit an entirely different class of athlete. That alone should necessitate the move. But when you're going to try to justify it by pretending it's so hard to recruit to Ole Miss because of how closely tied the state of Mississippi is to the Confederacy, Louisiana is not clean in this exchange. So you've got plenty of people who, if they wanted to, would be able to say, hey, you know who else likes to throw a Confederate flag up? Every tailgate outside Death Valley. Every single one. They love it.
They even got the purple and gold ones.
They make them. We could pull one up on the screen right now if we wanted to. Not gonna. So it's just, and it's Lane Kiffin in a nutshell, because he is so blissfully unaware that you almost want to give him credit for trolling because of how unaware his statements are. And this is not a first time event. But he's not. I think he's very genuine in trying to cover his own ass at all times, because he learned at a young age as a coach that was moving from Tennessee to USC to the Raiders to all the different moves he's made, that I've got to come up with great stories about why I make all these moves rather than just getting out before people find out what a jackass I am.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it felt so it felt so unnecessary to kind of kick that institution. And I know everything's a recruiting pitch. Everything is, if I paint this picture of Ole Miss being super hostile to black people, black athletes might not come. It's not what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I think you probably actually might find more open hostility to black people at LSU than you would at Ole Miss. Just knowing the nature of LSU fans versus what I've heard about Ole Miss fans. I'll tell you an anecdote before you respond. My mother-in-law is an LSU graduate, and so my brother-in-law Nathan, who I love dearly, had always kind of had an affinity for LSU even growing up, and was very excited about our home and home from a couple of years ago. And Nathan's got a pretty thick skin, and he said the LSU fans that came to Austin were the absolute worst, to the point that they had no interest in going to Baton Rouge for the follow-on game. So I don't know what he thinks he's selling, regarding the culture at LSU, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, 100% not. And right now he is in the honeymoon period. I think you asked Brian Kelly about what happens when things go wrong, or Ed Ogeron, or Les Miles, or literally any other coach before. That fan base will destroy you the second they smell blood, and they enjoy doing it. And your experience, or Nathan's experience with LSU fans, is not unique. I'm sure there are good ones. I'm sure there are people who comport themselves with, some sort of dignity, even though if they're John, they'll give you a beer and some gator or whatever it is they're serving at their tailgates.
Sometimes you get so bougie on this show, and it cracks me up. That was
the thing is, they're telling you it's alligator. It's not alligator. It's probably nutria, because that's who they are. But they're at least offering it. But there is a whole separate class of LSU fans, and I remember them from when A&M and LSU used to play every year before LSU backed out after losing like 5 in a row. Owing Texas A&M University like $200,000, which was big money back in that day. Now that's what we use on toilet paper per game. I'm sorry, per game.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was every other year, you'd have this caravan of trailers come in and take up any empty space in a parking lot in College Station, and it was just full of LSU fans. They weren't LSU graduates necessarily. I didn't, ask each one of them, but they were LSU fans, diehards, and they traveled with the team. And they were the worst human beings that you would ever run across. Drunk all the time, which I get it. I was in college, probably drunk most of the time there too. But loud, crass, throwing things, assaulting people, pulling knives, just because that's what you do in Louisiana, it must be cool to do in College Station, Texas. That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I think some of the weapons have gotten better as their incomes have increased, but they're still the same. I'm going to travel in a trailer caravan to follow a college football team because my entire self-worth is based on what 18-year-olds do on a piece of green grass 10 times a year. That's the fan base. But when they sense blood in the water, when they sense that their team's losing, all the things we're worried about, all the things Lane Kiffin is saying is happening in Mississippi is right in the face of those kids, right in the face of the athletes. And I think they're probably insulated on campus, but the Baton Rouge campus is not that big.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just as politically, it's probably pretty comparable to Texas, and the way its boosters get involved the minute they feel like something's not going, not even necessarily wrong, just not a direction they don't like. But you're right. But you're also focused on the fact that LSU in football and baseball in particular is literally all they have.
Yeah.
Do you see this though? This type of discourse having any kind of an effect on Ole Miss's ability to recruit players? I mean, it seems no.
I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but no, it's 2026. Every school in the SEC has an NIL budget that's bigger than the entire school's budget was 2 decades ago. And I'm not really exaggerating that point. Maybe a couple of exceptions. A&M's endowment's pretty good. Texas's endowments is pretty good. Beyond that, there's not much in the SEC money-wise that 2 decades ago is going to compete with an individual football team's spend on NIL. If Ole Miss has a chance to win, Ole Miss alumni will pony up money. And frankly, you start looking at who the Ole Miss alumni are. For the last 20 years, it's been kids coming from Houston and Dallas who could not get into Texas or Texas A&M.
It's true.
And ended up going to Ole Miss because the admission standards were low and Ole Miss was offering in-state tuition.
We call that a transition in the business.
But that's the reality of it. So the future for them is pretty good because those kids are going to come back. They're probably going to get oil and gas jobs with their dad's companies, and they'll have money to spend on their football program. I don't think, and if you have money, you're going to be able to overcome a lot of whatever the negative press is. Because believe me, I go to a school that a lot of people don't care for the military and identifies itself as a military training institution.
Sure.
And so that's something you have to recruit, that the A&M coaches have had to overcome. It's become a lot easier when you can give a kid $1 million to play football for you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's transition then, because one of the things, I'll take this back because, people that have been watching the show for, we're going on, I think 3 years now, and even iterations of the show beforehand, knew that I was really excited about the idea of Texas joining the Big Ten. And in part of that was the academic reputation. We've talked about it a bunch. The reason that didn't happen is because OU did not meet that same standard that all the other, I think outside of Nebraska, all the other Big Ten schools meet.
I think that's very unfair because OU has a very specific academic reputation.
They sure do, buddy.
It is not the lack of having a reputation.
It's not. But the one of the things that has always been a uniting factor on this show is that we are very proud of a degree from A&M, a degree from Texas, a degree from Florida and Vanderbilt. They all actually mean something. And you don't want to, I think it's in the short-term best interest of it's in the long-term best interest of your institution to not tarnish that. So Sark again said probably the quiet part out loud, the part you just said of, I've seen plenty of students at the school where I teach that couldn't get into one of those other the two flagship universities that have matriculated to somewhere in the SEC of less demanding academic standards, that are like Sam Houston State or Tech. But again, well, first of all, whenever Texas shows up to play Ole Miss, if they're not all throwing baskets on the field, I'm going to be very disappointed in the Ole Miss fan base. But where do you come down as somebody who's of a rival institution? But what were your thoughts when you first heard Sark say that? Did your heart go out to me for that? Or what were your thoughts about it?
You just referred to me as being bougie periodically, which I'll own. But if there was somebody writing a book on a manual of how to be bougie, it'd be your head football coach. I think sometimes that he wants to say things and justify whatever position he's taking, and he's fully warranted to do that sort of thing. But I also think sometimes he misses the fact that he is representing an entire university and not just 105 guys on a football team and a coaching staff. And I'm sure that, again, nothing he said was inaccurate. But I'm sure the academic side of your house was not exactly thrilled with the head football coach opining the way that he decided to. Again, Sark's not wrong. If Mike Elko had said the same thing about Texas A&M, it would have sounded a little bit differently because Mike Elko is from Pennsylvania. And he sounds like he's from New Jersey, which is weird. He doesn't have that hoagie thing that they have in Philadelphia.
No, he doesn't. You're right. He doesn't say Ewans either, which is a good thing because they say Ewans there, and I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. And he wouldn't have been wrong if he had said that about A&M. The head coach for Florida wouldn't. I don't even remember who that is now because Napier's not there anymore. He wouldn't be wrong if he said it about Florida. But I think there's some things that you don't necessarily throw at other schools, especially if you're going to share scheduling and sport athletic competitions with them, because it creates unnecessary animus for the fan bases. Now, college kids should eat that shit up, and you're exactly right. If there's not baskets being thrown and other things being, in a way, it made me miss playing Rice every year.
Okay.
And not because of the level of football or academic or football competition, or because I really have this great affinity for Rice. What I have an affinity for is the mob.
Yeah, 100%.
Would have taken all of this and done the shape of a basket, and Toto would have come out of it somehow.
Yeah. I do
But
miss the mob.
they would have intelligently turned that into something fun for both fan bases, even if you were on the receiving end of that jab. I don't trust that Ole Miss has any capacity, their student body has any capacity for any kind of intelligent discourse. I just expect baskets to be thrown at your players. Are they on your schedule this year?
They are. We're going there. So
yeah. So yes, wear your helmets. Keep your helmets on all times.
You are right about something, and it kind of goes back to, one of the things that we had even talked about when the Texas to SEC was announced, of whether or not it was a real cultural fit. And Sark kind of comes off like a guy basically from LA, because he's basically from LA, and he does kind of have that kind of arrogant way of carrying himself. And it's something I'm particularly sensitive to, being the industry that I'm in. But that LA thing is weird, and it did come across as very much in that vein of
Austin in general and Texas specifically bridged this very weird kind of chasm culturally. So Texas graduates, Texas as a school will want to present themselves as very erudite, very well spoken, very cultured. Everything that involves a tradition on your school, though, involves a cowboy hat and chaps and somebody saying yeehaw and white starch collar shirts with felt Stetsons. And it's this weird mix of cultures. And so Sark is definitely on one side of that. The Hellraisers are on a different side of that. And so it is a very weird dichotomy, but it is one of the things that I think allows the average Texan who has no interest in attending college to glom on to being a fan of Texas. Besides the winning part and the tradition and all that kind of fun stuff, it's that it's accessible and it allows you to ignore the snobby side of the school, because I see all these kids wearing cowboy boots and jeans and they must be like me in Mart, Texas.
You're not wrong. I mean, you're right. It is definitely.
Whereas, to compare it to A&M, it's cowboys or soldiers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of kids that don't see themselves in one of those two schools. And I'm stereotyping because the same kids go to both schools.
Well, that is the thing. In fact, we haven't really had a chance to talk about that stuff, and maybe that's more of when college baseball season's over. But early in my film career, I knew I was really close to one of the proudest Aggies I'd ever met. She graduated there. She was a professor there and was a lesbian living a very out lifestyle. And it was in many ways an eye-opening to what I think a lot of people's perception of A&M was of, no, here's a woman who's, with her shaved head and her tattoos, and half those tattoos are about being an Aggie. Like, it was a whole, it isn't just the whole T-SIP versus farmer thing that maybe would have been true in the 30s or the 40s hasn't really been true in a long time. It's just it's still in our songs, so that's what we have to talk about.
Well, yeah, and it's fun to role play. That's why furries exist.
We got a furries reference on the episode. I do have to comment, though. One of my freshmen who's a big college football and college baseball fan, we were talking about the Ole Miss thing, and his quote about the Sark comment and the Lane Kiffin comment, and he said, "In Mr. D, it's a rough week for Ole Miss, and it's only Tuesday." I was like, that was funny and true. They're starting to see, it looks like now, all of the college football world, except for SEC and except for ESPN, are on board with this 2014 playoff. I've told you that I've since come on board after having it explained to me like I was 3. The biggest benefit has been a thing you and I wanted gone for years, which was that championship weekend, which is what the SEC wants to hold on to. Where are you sitting now as this thing has changed? Because I think we should have some kind of resolution by July on what it's going to look like, probably going into the following year. Obviously not this year coming up, but the following year.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect anything for the 26, 27 football season. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'm of two minds. Do I think there are 24 teams who are worthy of a national championship in football every year? No. Do I think that it matters at this point? Probably not, because I think that you're going to be able to, and I know this shouldn't be part of it, but it is, generate enough revenue to overcome the SEC's concerns about losing a championship game weekend, which they have a very nice part of their TV contract tied to that game.
Yeah.
That's going to go away. I think more than anything else, that's the SEC's concern about that week.
ESPN's concern is they might have to share some of the TV with Fox.
Right. And so at some point, it just starts making sense that if that's the direction you're going, you have the benefits to me are that you have 24 fan bases who are now in it until the last week. Well, really 30 fan bases probably that are in it to the very last weekend, trying to figure out who's in, what your seating is, where you're going. You have 2 rounds of games on campus, which are much better than whatever bowl game the championship game is going to end up in. Again, even though that didn't work out for my team this past year, hosting that playoff game,
it was still electric.
Yeah, and it was a big deal. You're going to have more conferences who have the ability to put forward their best team, and more teams that don't necessarily win a conference but are worthy of being in the playoffs, like a Texas, like a Notre Dame this past year, who should be in over James Madison and I've already forgotten who the Tulane. But literally, I've already forgotten. And that goes to my first point. There's probably not teams that deserve to be in there that are going to get in there, but ultimately, I don't think that matters because Tulane did not cry because they knew they were going to lose that football game. They made some money and got a boost for their program, which improved their recruiting, which is going to allow them, in theory, to continue to compete at a higher level in their conference and get more appearances in an expanded playoff. So that's how that system should work. Is there going to be a weird day where a James Madison knocks off an Alabama? I don't think so, but
yeah, it's not baseball or basketball, right? Like that's just not going to happen.
But I wouldn't have told you that App State could have beat A&M coming off a top 5 ranking 1 year. I mean, at home. Shit happens on any given Saturday.
Yeah.
It won't be as common as the NCAA basketball tournament. It won't be as common as the NCAA baseball tournament. But it'll happen, and it'll be a huge story when it does. But ultimately, the cream will rise to the crop. So worrying about the 20 through 24 team that shouldn't be in there, ultimately, it's just people grousing because things have changed and they don't like change.
I think the other thing it'll do too.
I'm struggling to understand the downside of what's being proposed at this point. And I think I've come completely around on it because ultimately the concerns just aren't all that concerning.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, the ancillary benefit is it does preserve those non-conference matchups that we like, where you're not gonna, if A&M decides to go play Notre Dame again, and whichever one of those 2 teams loses, it ended up being an elimination game. And well, I mean, I know it. So is Texas and Ohio State. It should not be an elimination game by taking on a tough team outside of your schedule. With a 24-team playoff, it's not anymore. And I think we're always talking about the best part about college football is the regular season. I think you help preserve that if you remove some of the game-to-game stakes, where all that will do is affect seeding, not necessarily being in or out. And
well, yeah, I think that you want to have good matchups in the regular season. And I mean, the Texases and Ohio States, the A&M Notre Dames, that you want to see the D1 schools playing other D1 schools. I can tell you from knowing a lot of season ticket holders, nobody's excited when our schools play Abilene Christian. And sometimes we do because you got to fill the schedule.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fill the schedule with somebody who's potentially going to beat you because there's no value in it. And the committee to this point has proven there's no value in playing tough competition in those games. So you're seeing schools drop better competition for more guaranteed wins. If you're going to move to this 24-game schedule, if you're going to reward teams for playing better games out of conference, you've got to fix the selection piece of that. And they need to go back to just the BCS formula, but expand it to 24 teams instead of having this committee and the human element of, well, I don't like this team because they didn't play. the teams with the blue jerseys as much as I wanted them to. And I don't know. And historically, they play better against the team with the red jerseys, so we can't match them up there. But this is the kind of shit they're talking about in there.
Yeah.
It's not about, hey, Texas lost to Ohio State, but guess what? That was a top 3 team that they lost to on the road, and they should get credit for playing that game. That's a stronger schedule than whatever James Madison had to do.
Yeah. And it's almost like this is one of those areas where, like you're saying, the BCS formula itself, no one had an issue during the BCS time with the formula. It was purely the number of teams that got to be part of the dance. This part fixes that. Yeah.
Go to something where the human element is taken out of selecting the teams, and this all works. If you continue to bastardize it and have the Kirby Hocuts of the world need to have their voice heard in the selection, and as they should, as the commissioner of a conference, go in and politic for your teams or specific teams in your conference, that defeats the whole purpose of having a tournament of whatever you're trying to build. It's just get rid of that politicking, get rid of the human element, get rid of Condoleezza Rice on the selection committee because she's a fan of Navy. I mean, that's the kind of idiocy they were trying to legitimize these committees with.
Is she still on it?
No. That was like a one and done. And I mean, this was several years ago, but that's the kind of level of, I don't want a former AD. I don't want a former coach. I don't want any current ADs. I just want a computer or a formula that you can look at and say, these are the top 5 teams. These are the top 10 teams. These are the top 24 teams, and seed them from there. Mm-hmm. And there should be no other consideration about history or television revenue or ESPN's desires picking those teams.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a good, I guess before we move out of college sports altogether, does A&M need to win the next 2 to be a national seed, to be a top 8 national seed?
To have a chance, they do. And I think we're seeing what we've been talking about, or what I've been talking about with this team. They're going to be able to hit with anybody on any given day. They came back and scored 11 runs. They had a 2-0 lead starting off the game in the first inning with back-to-back home runs in their first at bat. And then they proceeded to give up 13 runs because we just couldn't get anybody out. 13 runs in one inning, in the third inning. It ended up being an 18-11 loss at home against Mississippi State. They've got to win these next 2 games. There's no doubt about it. I still think they host if they don't, but they'll be 9 through 16, and they'll probably get matched up with Texas at that point for a super regional, because that the NCAA, for baseball at least, values travel dollars. No other sport do they value travel dollars, by the way. Yeah. Somehow in baseball and softball. So they have their fate in their own hands. And I do like that Mike Early did not sugarcoat anything and basically said pitching has to be better. And we can argue systematically that he should recruit better pitchers, but the guys who are given the opportunities have to perform. And if they don't, that's what's going to happen. But they have their future in front of them should they want to grasp it. The offense is certainly doing their part. Pitching's got to be better.
Yeah. But you think they need to win both the next 2?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Texas needs to win one of the next 2 to clinch the first 2 buys in the SEC tournament, which none of us give 2 poo-poos about.
I mean, it'd be good for them not to rest up guys, but ultimately, I don't care what happens in the SEC tournament. It's fun to watch. I'll have it on the TV in my office. All the games are on, but it's not.
Yeah, when it starts on a random ass Tuesday.
A random ass Tuesday at 10 in the morning, because you got to fit in a bunch of games, and I haven't even looked at the forecast, but I guarantee you it's going to rain in Hoover because it always rains in Hoover.
It always rains in Hoover. Yeah, that's fun. You know, there are
3 stadiums.
But say there are ballparks in the footprint of the SEC where they have roofs that you can use. I know the Astros are on the road now, I think. So
the Astros don't even use their park, do they?
No. Oh my God.
Let me tell you what I was prepared to talk about instead of the Astros today. AirPods are a great thing. But they are the most disgusting invention that Apple has ever come up with. Because have you ever taken one of your AirPods out and really looked at it after you've worn it for about a month? It's the color of the X on your shirt because all of your earwax builds up in all the crevices. And it's such a problem that there is a cottage industry on Amazon with tools designed specifically to clean the shit out of your AirPods. It's double-ended for her pleasure. It's got a soft end to get there, but it's got a little pointy, sharp end that sometimes if you have an overzealous TSA agent will ask you about. And that's it to get in and scrape the earwax and dirt out of all the crevices. But it comes with a nice little cap for safety. These cost about $10. Fully worth the investment if you're into the AirPod or any kind of inner ear hearing device, because otherwise this gets gross, the AirPods get gross, the hinge here gets gross, and those are the things I'd rather talk about for 5 minutes than talk about the Houston Astros in 2026. Because unless I hear Joe Espada has been fired or we start trading guys, there's nothing much left to talk about.
It's bad. Even Mike Burrows was uncompetitive yesterday.
They were, in a way that you don't see in Major League Baseball much anymore, completely outclassed this 4-game series against the Mariners. And that's not because I think the Mariners are a great team. You can look at their record and see that they're not. But the Astros were just not competitive in 3 of those 4 games. And the one they won was an overtime flip a coin kind of game that I wasn't waiting for the Astros to win as much as I was waiting for them to screw up and let the Mariners win.
Yeah. I guess the only thing to really talk about then is, they brought Amai back early, which we said was based on nothing. And what did he do? He promptly gave up 6 earned runs.
6 earned runs.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had 1 good inning. His first inning was okay.
He's rocking that 9.24 ERA.
So he'll be given another start in Minnesota next week. They've confirmed he'll be on the bus. I do wonder about whether or not Joe Espada is going to be on the bus, especially if the series against the Rangers this weekend goes the way I expect it to.
It's it is, and what's funny is I'm about to be the guy that I hate. I hate the guy that tries to psychologically diagnose what's going on with the baseball team through watching a stream, but they look like a team with no energy. They look like a team with no heart. They look like a team that's already ready to decide who's still going to be here at the All-Star break, or at least after the trade deadline. I guess the fortunate thing is that Christian Walker is playing himself into somebody that actually might be a trade piece. And that would go a long way towards freeing up money for 2027. But who's going to be spending that money? If it's Dana Brown, I don't trust it.
Well, you look at the teams that need a first baseman, and I don't know that any of the top playoff contenders fit that bill yet. I always think Freddie Freeman's on his last legs, but I think he's entrenched with the Dodgers. But I could absolutely see the Dodgers trading for Christian Walker because he hits like 550 in Dodger Stadium. Why not just keep that guy on the bench, if nothing else, to keep him from hurting you?
Not only does he hit 550 at Dodger Stadium, he also hits really, really well in Colorado and Arizona, 2 teams that they will play 20 more times.
So there's a home. But, I mean, if you're looking at – because this is what I do now when I watch Astros games, especially at work. I just start making spreadsheets because it looks like I'm working. This year, free agents, and this is back of the matchbook stuff, so I might be off on a couple of these guys, but Abreu leaves after the end of this year. Iñigo De Los Santos, Lance McCullers, Steven Okert, Nate Pearson, and Christian Vasquez are all free agents at the end of this season. Christian Javier, Isaac Paredes, Jeremy Pena, Christian Walker, Jake Myers are all free agents at the end of the 27 season. All those guys I mentioned should be on the trade block. And I realize there's no market for Lance McCullers Jr. and there's no market for Christian Javier, but some of those other guys should be able to net you something. And
you should get like something for Jake Myers. You could get a couple of
should. If you are a competent GM, you should be able to get something for a defensive specialist to a playoff contender.
A fourth outfielder for a defensive specialist, fourth outfielder would be really valuable to a team like the Braves, who I think have Mauricio Dubon starting in the outfield. So And I mean, and Mauricio Dobon's raking this year, by the way. Like, I'm not saying I want Mauricio Dobon back. He's not the difference between winning and losing, but it just.
But if Abreu continues to improve, I think you get something of value for him. You should be able to get something of value for, in theory, 2 seasons of Isaac Paredes, or season and a half, and a season and a half of Christian Walker. Those guys should net you at least AAA guys who are ready to make the jump to the majors in the next year and a half. If we have a competent GM at the wheel at the point that we start making these deals, those guys should net you something. Then you need to start having some serious conversations about whether or not you're going to sign Hunter Brown to an extension or you're going to let him walk. Because if you can get him with 2 years of controllability, that's not a word, you can start rebuilding this franchise at the minor league levels, which you're just going to have to do. Take a flight. Peter Lambert is under club control until 2028, but if he keeps pitching the way he is, somebody's going to want to make a deal for him. Yiner, somebody still thinks Yiner can play baseball. I frankly think the one positive thing that's happened is that Yiner's been hurt and Christian Vasquez has been allowed to show what an actual major league catcher looks like again, because I think some of our fan base has forgotten.
Yeah.
But there's 18 guys on the 40-man roster, which is actually 47 players big because of all the guys on the IL right now. That's a thing. Should be being talked about getting moved. If you're not under club control through the 2029 season, you should not feel like you're safe as a member of this franchise.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact numbers look like for who's and what's, but and we maybe part ways a little bit, but to me, I would do everything I can to extend Hunter Brown, and then Cam Smith, Jordan, and Altuve. Everybody else can go.
I'm not against extending, but what I'm saying is if you're not going to make a good faith effort, and I mean a real good faith effort to extend a Hunter Brown, what is the point of holding on to him? You're not going to win this year. I doubt seriously you're going to win it in whatever abbreviated season happens next year, if there even is one. And by 2028, these guys are all 2 years older.
Let me address something too when it comes to and maybe I'm the one, maybe like this is where I feel like I don't fit in with modern fandom. You're not going to have me come on this show and bitch about Jim Crane. And I'm not going to come on this show and I'm not going to bitch about Jerry Jones. The fact of the matter is Astros fans of our age wandered in the desert for 40 something years before we got a World Series. Mm-hmm. So people can blame him for the Astros downfall right now. But if you're going to do that, you have to give him credit. And I find it gross that so much of our fan base wants to feel like, oh yeah, Michael Nash, if Josh Hader returns in June and pitches well, deal him too. Absolutely. And this is back to your point, Andy, even if Abreu doesn't marginally, improve, I think there's enough skins on the wall for him that a club probably feels like there's something they can do with him.
I don't doubt that at all, but I think you have to have a competent front office to make those deals. And I am getting farther and farther away from believing that Dana Brown is that guy.
What if they hired me and you and Michael Nash?
I would trust Michael Nash over me and you. And I would trust you over me. So, I mean, you're a solid second there.
But I would trust you over me. Oh, boy.
Yeah, but you and I only know from what we know of the minor leagues, we know what uniforms are cool. That's not really a criteria.
We would drag all Longhorns and Aggies.
I would say were we in charge of the front office, the home uniforms would look a lot better.
Yes, they would. All right, so Michael Nash.
But I would trust Michael Nash to evaluate a minor leaguer.
Yes. You and I can be in part of the game day experience and the aesthetics.
I would be very happy to have the Reed Ryan role that he held up until the 2018 season.
Yes. God, we do need new uniforms. They need to roll out with new uniforms and a new team in 2028. But no, it's been, God bless a fan of the show, Craig Harmon, and he confessed to me that he canceled his he said, I'd be happy, Michael Nash, I'd be happy to not to try not to screw it up and then take the salary as solace if I do. Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing too, is these guys getting paid lots of money to not do a very good job.
I will work for 50% of whatever Dana Brown is making.
Yeah. And I actually think that Dana Brown's going to be a good GM in his career. And I think Joe Espada is going to be a good manager in their careers. I just don't think it's going to be here. And baseball's filled with stories of guys who fell on their face in their first jobs.
Saint AJ Hinch.
Well, exactly. AJ Hinch. Somebody was the student I took to the game is a big Yankee fan, but he doesn't remember because he was a child. But like Joe Torre was terrible until he wasn't.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how good Joe Torre got when George Steinbrenner started buying players for him. It was just crazy.
You have some of the best players ever to play at their positions. Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like I was saying, Craig Harmon like kind of confessed to me and was like, I can't, I got rid of my Space City home network. And I don't blame anybody for that. I don't think it makes you a bad fan if you're like living in 2026 and the best thing to do for your mental health is to not watch this. I'm sorry, I'll quote my drill sergeant whenever the first time I tried to put my uniform on, this walking abortion that is a baseball team. Yeah. I don't blame you. I'm not going to, and maybe that's why I'm here. I'm here to watch them so that way you don't have to. But
well, did you see what I texted you this morning?
I did, but I'm going to read it aloud for everybody.
I was hoping maybe we could get a screenshot in post, but it was a little bit disturbing to know that I'm now being threatened by the Astros.
So basically you got an ad that essentially says, don't make us chase you, come back, #chase the fight. Oh my God. So Jessica just chimed in. Our neighbor Frank has captured his subscription. Let me tell you about the drama. But before we get to your text, let me tell you about the drama of Frank. So Frank for years has been hopping from Fubo to YouTube TV and whatever. When I told him about Space City Home Network, he was like, finally, I can watch the Stros. 2 months later, he has canceled his subscription. Yeah, it's rough. So anyway, Andy sees this ad in his social media. I've gotten emails I'm still getting emails as a former season ticket holder. I actually filled out a survey. I think I'm getting 10 free tickets. 10.
For filling out a survey?
For filling out a survey. I'm not getting 2 free tickets. I'm getting 10. I don't know if I get to also throw an inning. I don't know, but I bet if I would have held out for that.
You might have to.
Don't make us chase you. Come back, chase the fight. And your caption to that was desperation is a cheap cologne or something to that effect.
Stinky cologne.
It's a stinky cologne.
Well, I mean, if you watch, I don't discount Businessman Special because those are weird, especially before school gets out. So yesterday, I'm not worried about the Wednesday night game where we were actually competitive. There may have been 7,000 people in the park.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to report sold tickets, so that's a higher number. But you look around, it affects merchandise sales, it affects concession sales, it affects parking that the Astros get a piece of in most of those lots. It's not a good look, and it's not. If anything is going to motivate Jim Crane, it's going to be nobody being at that park.
And as we have reported on the show, despite what this weird AI article was that had the same thing apparently College Station is apparently doing according to this AI thing. But as we talked about on the show, Jim Crane has invested so much money in the area around the ballpark to try to build up that ballpark experience that I think baseball fans would love. He's not going to let this thing slip into mediocrity for very long. And I, for one, welcome that. I don't think he's Jerry Jones. I don't think he's going to. I think that he made some bad moves out of situations that he felt like didn't have a GM, need to sign a guy. Like, I don't think that that's going to be his go-to play going forward.
No, and I think that Astros fans, and I'm not harping on the folks that found the Astros in 2017. There's a whole host of Houstonians that discovered baseball in that year. God love you. We were welcome. But I think Astros fans our age have tended to forget Drayton McClain or John McCain, or Ford Motor Credit, who owned the Astros for a couple of years, or Judge Roy Hoffines and the people he represented. There was a thing on Twitter this week at some point, and I had a mini conversation with somebody, and they had the Mount Rushmore of bad contracts, and Imai was up there, and filled out the other three, and somebody put Carlos Lee. And I have my own thoughts on Carlos Lee, but the guy posted an 818 or he slashed 818 OPS, had 118 OPS plus, 8.8 WAR in 6 seasons. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. Yeah. The reason that team sucked around him is because Drayton McClain decided that he wanted to pay one guy and didn't want to pay anybody else. That's not Carlos Lee's fault. I get why fans project on that. But Drayton McClain is the guy who caused the tank years because he refused to invest or sign anybody to a minor league contract that wanted, their market share, wanted their money, wanted their slot money. And so you got crappy player after crappy player after crappy player so you could sign Kaz Matsui. So you could bring Miguel Tejada in to play for a year and a half to patchwork and just have people come. John McClain was the guy that didn't want to sign Nolan Ryan for the same salary he earned in 1987 to a 1988 contract, which led to a whole host of Rangers fans being born because they all of a sudden became relevant.
Yeah.
So you can miss me with all the Jim Crane is bad for baseball, bad for the Astros stuff, because every bit of success this franchise has had has been under Jim Crane. And I will tell you the proof of that is if you ask anybody before 2017 who their favorite Astros team of all time is, it's going to be a team that lost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Heartbreakingly.
People are going to say 98.
Yeah.
Right. That's usually what
86.
Yeah.
It's going to be some heartbreaking story of disappointment and missing it. And for whatever Jim Crane's faults are, this team got good because Jim Crane hired Jeff Luhnow because they had a plan. And I will trust that Jim Crane has enough invested in this thing, being Astros baseball, and the immediate real estate all around that stadium to want them to get competitive really quick.
And I think that a lot of what we are seeing is not the mismanagement of cheapness that we saw out of the owners you already mentioned, but in some ways the natural bill that comes due by doing everything you can to stay relevant for 10 years. When people talk about how unprecedented the Astros run was, it's because it's unprecedented, and eventually you're going to pay the piper on that. This isn't the same. This is a bad minor league system because of, shockingly enough, the Astros were punished for sign stealing. I know that we weren't, according to Yankees fans, but also what happens when you keep trading to make deals to stay relevant at the trade deadline. Like, this was going to happen. It probably should have happened 2 years ago, but it didn't.
You gave up a lot to acquire Justin Verlander. Totally justified. You gave up a lot to get Zach Greinke. Totally justified.
You gave up a lot to get Garrett Cole, even though that was an off-season deal. You gave up a lot to get him.
To get Christian Vasquez from the Boston in 2022, you gave up Wilmer Abreu, who would look really good in our outfield right now. There's a price to pay for winning the way the Astros did. If there's a fault, it's the stubbornness of not wanting to re-sign your own free agents. We can have that conversation probably at a different time. If there's a fault, that's it. But I don't know that this team is any better with Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker on the team. I really don't at this point, because
they can't throw strikes either.
They can't throw strikes either. And I don't know that they'd be able to stay healthy with the medical staff that the Astros have.
No, totally right. I got a last question for you, and it's a heavy question, but it's a question that I think begs being asked, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, so you can go quicker. Have you ever seen an American president bend over and take it the way Trump did in China? Because, oh my God, from him being, what's that?
Go ahead.
From him being lectured about Taiwan to him being openly mocked on Chinese social media, which, don't tell me, people, that at social media, China doesn't control it, because China absolutely controls everything that's on their social media, to him rambling about how we have a lot of Chinese food here, to China promising not to sell weapons to Iran, which they already absolutely don't do. They sell parts to make weapons, which they're not stopping that part of it all. I'm flabbergasted that there are so many maggots walking around saying that America is somehow stronger with sleepy Donald Trump at the wheel.
Well, because they're justifying it the same way that Trump did. A, because he didn't understand most of the things that were being said at and about him. B, whatever he did understand, he just blamed on Joe Biden. And I will tell you, even as somebody who is rooted in their beliefs as my father, the Joe Biden stuff is wearing really, really thin. Joe Biden didn't cause Spirit Airlines to go out of business because of a war that Joe Biden started. Joe Biden hasn't been president for 18 months now. It is Trump's baby, good or bad. And I think more and more people on the right side of the aisle, the conservative side of the aisle, not the MAGA folks, but the Republicans, are opening their eyes to this. Not enough for my taste, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, Trump is. I don't want to buy into every conspiracy theory I hear, but if you told me Trump was compromised, would he be doing anything different than what he's doing now?
Yeah, and I think we all thought he was compromised by Russia, and maybe it's not. He's not compromised.
Or Putin and Xi could absolutely be working together, because that wouldn't be unprecedented.
Well, to me, it's like you've got your main important job as the commander in chief is to strengthen the international viewpoint of your country. And he's not doing that. I mean, from his own idiocy, again, talking about the number of China, like we have a lot in common because we eat a lot of Chinese food here. Well, we have a lot of people that are here because they were escaping communist China. I don't know if I would have brought that up, but just I'm flabbergasted at how poorly this trip went and how it's being spun.
Yeah, and it's being spun well, but not only by the Newsmaxes and the Foxes of the world, but NBC, CNN, which I guess is part of the Peter Thiel network now. Just all seem to be lapping it up, and I know it's
shocking about it too, right?
And I know it's kind of just this idea that we have to maintain access, so we're going to say whatever we need to do to stay on the good side. But at some point, you're not journalism anymore.
No, and I know that there were deals made for soybeans and whatnot, and that's obviously good for American farmers who are only struggling because of the tariffs in the first place.
Which he doesn't seem to understand. He doesn't.
I cheat on my wife.
I know he knows oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz because somebody eventually explained that to him. I don't think he's fully grasped the idea that it's not just gasoline that comes from oil, but it's things like fertilizer that our farmers need that they currently can't get, which means when the next harvest comes, there's not going to be much to harvest because they can't grow anything because they can't get the fertilizer now.
That's the other thing too, is this is a problem that we're not going to be done dealing with this problem until it's time for them to start harvesting, which by the way is not going to be for another 6 months. And I mean, honestly, I think fortunately, right as the midterms are happening, so that's at least something. And I know that we'll get to I want to talk about the redistricting with you next week. I don't think it's going to be as bad an effect for Democrats as people think. I think enough people are upset, enough people are like your dad, that a lot of these competitive districts that might have always gone red might not go red this time. And I think that's where I think things are at. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a frustrating thing to watch, but thank you all for watching with us. If you've got, again, we want to send out a big congrats to the St. Michael's graduates, the St. Pius graduates that are all getting ready to take that next step in their lives. A lot of future Longhorns and Aggies out there. Maybe they'll be fans of our show someday.
Hey, and a special shout out to Michael Nash, to Jess, to anybody else who comments live, because that gives us things to do on the show besides stare at each other.
Although I could stare at you all day.
I get lost in your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Too bad I don't have Debbie Gibson queued up. But no, but seriously, like it's fun to know that. I know like our viewership is scattered and we get a lot on the podcast afterwards, but it is fun for us to kind of not even necessarily know what we're going to talk about until somebody comes up with an idea. So we do really appreciate that. For Andy, I'm Jim. This has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation. The season finale of Ballpark Nation is up now. And then starting next week, we're going to be highlighting once a week all the ballpark we visited. And Alicia Rivera, who was on Monday, will be rating things on a scale of 1 to 5 wieners. So if you want to watch Alicia talk about wieners.
Wait, okay. She's doing a wiener rating?
She's doing a wiener rating.
You may want to work on the phrasing.
No, I think she's embraced the phrasing. Like she's embraced. That's the most important part of her identity is her wiener
There's
rating.
Entire OnlyFans industry is based on wiener rating. She knows that, right?
Well, we might need to use that to raise some money for the show. So
All right.
for Andy, I'm Jim. See ya.